No, that I was telling him, we had some feedback last month. Yeah.
We'll go ahead and get the meeting called to order. It is 6.
Brett Eady,
Yep.
Bob Sullivan,
Yes.
Mike Hancock,
Yes.
Di Pfeiffer,
Yes.
Alex Shada,
Yes.
Renee Philmeyer,
Yes.
Can you pledge, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Copy of Nebraska Open Meetings Act on the wall. Approval of the agenda. Any discussion? Chris?
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yep.
Bob,
Yes. Board of minutes from the June meeting. Any additions, subtractions, or any errors? Motion approved. Any discussion? Chris?
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yep.
Bob,
Yes. And the claims that were attached, any questions on the claims? Sorry. Claims, any questions? If not, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Any discussion on any of those claims? Chris?
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
4.1 treasurer's report. Treasurer's report. Any questions about that report?
I did. I've got a question, and it's on one of these reports. We've got wire transfer fees, quite a few of them. Is that something that has to happen?
Yeah, because we don't have checks for that account, because it's kind of a temporary account. And so we have to wire money from that account to our vendors, and they charge us $100. Sometimes they give us money back, sometimes they don't. And I have set up online, so some of them we can start doing online.
Is that something that's going to continue for the long term, or is that kind of a
Not
short?
the transfer, because I'll do it online instead,
Okay.
but we just got that set up.
Okay. But that'll start going away with the wire transfer.
But you'll still have funds going back and forth.
Any other questions about that particular report? Policy review. Brandon?
Okay, I believe I sent about 5 policies to go through before we approved anything tonight. Just starting with 5015, and this is going to be discussion, I think, for you guys. 5015, student rights, question of the addition of numbers 9 and 10 to the criteria. That was a recommendation made by one of the board members. I was asked to put it in print so you guys could see it, and then we would discuss it tonight.
Brandon, how are we having? Are we just going through talking, discussing one by one?
I was just going to go one by one so we could stay.
Are we taking any action on this particular,
No,
or are we? gonna
this
do
is
it that
discussion
way?
and then action will be following.
Following.
Down
Right.
below during action
Gotcha,
items,
gotcha.
during full
Yep.
chapters.
What's our current practice?
What was provided was what is written either in statute or guidance from government. These were additional clarifications that were suggested.
I just have a question. On surveys, this is related to surveys, but we also do what are called screeners. And I just have a question, if parents are notified about those before those are done.
Di,
Yeah.
can you define what you mean by a screener?
They do 3 a year, one of them, I believe, is mental health. I'm not real sure what they are, but I think there's a terminology thing here, like, to me it's a survey, but they call it a screener. And in our handbook, it says we may do a screen or whatever, but it doesn't say that we do them, and we do them. And so I think that's not very transparent for parents to know that their child is having these screeners done.
I just want to, we have talked about this on multiple occasions, and I think there's some discrepancy between what's a survey, what's a screener. I just want to make sure we're all speaking the same language. If
Right.
someone can tell me what's a survey and what's a screener and what's our policy
What
on
would be the
both.
difference, the biggest difference between the two?
And I'm going to try not to talk out of turn. Josh will be much more knowledgeable here. A survey would be collecting just general data to compile to represent the district, where a screener would be more individual based, where it's looking for maybe red flags, blue flags, white, whatever it is. Maybe this is a good thing, a bad thing that we need to dig a little deeper into with the student. That would be how I would define the difference.
But a screener's good to all students.
Yeah, it's not,
So,
unless it's specifically for special education or some other recognition or identification.
down the screener, the survey list.
I think Josh has a schedule that we're going to use this year that includes
Because
it.
there was, I know we got together last year, kind of over it before. And I think that some schools would send letters out before they do the screeners so that the parents can opt out. And we don't do that. So,
But on surveys, we do.
Under this new policy, I think
We do.
that'd be required.
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
why I would like to
identification.
see the screeners be included with the
Survey
surveys.
screeners,
So there's
yeah.
not a word, yeah,
Just have a detailed list
yeah.
that goes on.
Awesome.
It's not something that parents choose to have their child participate in that screener survey. They can, if they don't, they don't. Absolutely. Parents' choice.
So with that, what we might do is just in number 1 there, put surveys and screens or screeners, and then that will clarify that right off the bat. It might need to be changed a little bit in the body of the policy too.
Okay.
Questions about verbiage?
Okay. The second one is going to be early kindergarten enrollment, not general kindergarten enrollment, but if you're not of age, what criteria are in place for kindergarten enrollment. This was developed, I think, by Jen and Josh as far as putting criteria in place. In general, you want it to be fairly stringent criteria because we want to make sure kids are ready to enroll. If they're going to make that leap early, I think you have academic consideration, I think you have social consideration. It's a lot more whether a kid is simply smart enough to do it.
Brandon, how many do we have? How many early applications do we have?
I would say it's very rare.
One a year? Or maybe not?
Jen, do you know off the top of your head?
In general, I've had about 1 a year. I've had none this year. Last year I had 2. So it averages about 1 a year.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable with this verbiage?
Yes.
And I ran it by KSB and they were good with it as well.
Any other questions on this policy?
Okay, 6003 instructional programs. Here you will see a change on number 5 to prioritize academics in comparison to extracurricular activities.
What did it say before?
Anything in red underlined is new, anything that's struck through existed but was taken out. So before it said the board intends to strike a sensible balance between, everything there in black. Both work and play are important in each student's total development and education.
And why did we add this?
Recommendation from a committee member.
Yeah, I can tell you why. Those were my recommendations. Because before it said, the board intends to strike a sensible balance between the time spent on academics and time spent on extracurricular activities, acknowledging that both work and play are important in each student's total development and education. I just think we need to emphasize our focus is on education first. And extracurricular helps. It is an educational tool. So it now says the board intends to prioritize time spent on academics over time spent on extracurricular activities, acknowledging that the primary role of the district is to educate students, but also recognizing that extracurricular activities serve as an important educational tool.
So you made an unwritten rule to a written rule.
Basically,
In your mind.
and it aligns with something that is in a different policy that says, I think it's somewhere in the extracurricular, where it says we prioritize education. This just wasn't consistent with that. Yeah, and I would hope that this reflects our priorities as a district. And I also am not sure that extracurricular is for play. You know, the way it was written previously.
Questions on verbiage?
Okay. The next one is 6025, student cell phone and other electronic devices. The only thing you'll see here is the inclusion of what was discussed at the last meeting. Talked it through with KSB, with first offense, second offense, third offense. Just wanted to make sure that that was clean for you guys. Made sense.
I thought that looked good.
Any questions or comments on that change?
Okay, last one. And again, this was recommendation from a committee member. This is review of library materials and selection of library materials. It's a fairly lengthy policy. KSB put in front of you a few options. Last time we discussed, while legal, they didn't recommend the board committee approach necessarily, just from a time respect. What you have in front of you removes option 1 and 2 from administrative review and committee review. It does put in place board committee review of all library materials, and then when there's a request for a review, it would start at the administrative level and move to a board committee, I think.
So here's my question on this. What problem are we trying to solve? Because we've had our administration do this role, which strikes me as a administrative kind of responsibility. What problem are we trying to solve with this change?
Well, is this basically what I sent out and then you just went in and redlined it? Okay, so one of the options was to have the final say on the board. And if there's gonna be a complaint within our community about stuff we have in our libraries, we're gonna hear about it at the board level. And I want the board to be equipped to make a decision on it at that point. It should be handled administratively, and there's an administrative process that goes all the way through. But if that isn't satisfying to the person making the complaint, then the board makes the final call on it. And probably agree with the administration by that point, but if the board feels that the material should be maybe set aside for parent authorization before the child can see it, then that's the decision the board gets to make.
So Bob, that is not at all how I read this version of the policy.
And I don't know if this is exactly what I sent, but that's the one I wrote.
So as I read this, every single book, every digital resource that comes into the school must be approved by the full board, following committee review and recommendation. Every complaint about a book must be reviewed by the curriculum committee and come before the full board. And I can just tell you, I did not run for this board to spend all of our meetings reviewing books.
Yeah, I know.
So I guess here's what I would say on that. I 100% support the idea that parents get to direct the education of their kids. And we have carried that concept throughout our policies in terms of allowing parents to opt out. So we just talked about it for the surveys and screeners. If there's curriculum that a parent is not comfortable with, or a particular book or a speaker, we allow parents to opt their kids out. I would think that we would do the same thing here, because these are optional materials. No kids ever have to check a book out of our library for their entire career. So I guess my recommendation would be leave it with the administrators. And if we want to ultimately allow an appeal up to the board for final decision, yes, we can be the final arbiters. I know that policy before didn't say that. It said that there was no right of appeal. So it can get to the board eventually, but I don't think it starts with us.
I agree. I think you and I agree on that. I'm not sure if this is exactly word for word the policy that I kind of reread, but the way that I wrote it, or the way that I read it through, was that it goes through the current process up until the point where the person gets the superintendent and still is not satisfied with that book being available to all the students. At that point, it comes to the board committee, which might have to be a whole new committee, or might be the curriculum committee at that point, to make a recommendation to the board whether or not to become restricted.
Or why not just have it come to the board? Why do we need a committee in the interim? If we're going to let the administration do what they've done, Brandon, how long has this been our policy of administrator review?
At least 7 years.
Okay. So that is our policy. What we could introduce is a right of appeal to the full board if there is some sort of an objection. So if we're on the same page with that, does anyone object if I were to do a red line and send that back to the group with that thought process?
No, that'd be fine.
Because the other issue here, I know that the KSB version said it stays in circulation until the process. And this says it comes out of circulation if it represents a perspective that may not be universal. Well, I would imagine that probably applies to 95% of the books, right? Because there's nothing that's universal. But I also, looking at some of the cases, it isn't the standard that we can pull books because we disagree with what's in them. I think I saw a couple standards. One was pornographic and one was pervasively vulgar. So I think this standard is probably not in line with the First Amendment. But I do think pornographic or pervasively vulgar. Now, that's gray, right? What is that? You know it when you see it. And I think if the administration uses a standard like that, and it meets that standard, pull it, and then if it needs to come before the full board.
And that language actually came from KSB. That language existed in the policy, I think, as originally presented.
Well, this is all brand new.
But I dropped it down from another part of the policy to keep it in there, because the question was, does it stay in, or does it stay in circulation or not? I just moved their language down to the bottom.
Okay. I did not see that language anywhere else in here. But again, I would be happy, if in general that seems acceptable, I'd be happy to do a red line and send that out so everybody can review it.
Okay, so when it comes to it here later on, we are going to have policy approval and a resolution for policy approval to enact the policies that we have. I think there's going to need to be a statement of 6037 not being a part of that approval quite yet, because it's going to get reworked. If you guys are okay with, they just turned 5015, the other four that we went through, then we're fine to do that tonight. Okay.
To be clear, the way you're going to redraft this would be if the patron wasn't satisfied with the superintendent's decision, it would come before the whole board or the committee. I think the whole board is fine with that. That's what I mean.
Administrative reports, attached. Brandon,
Lots of policy.
communications. Audience comments? Doctor?
I'm Kyle Cooper here in Wahoo. Microphones are nice. Speakers are nice. So everybody can hear now. There's so many people here. But it actually does, I think, help online too. So that's good. The one thing that I just wanted to point out, and I think it was covered maybe the last meeting as I was listening, you're going over the protection of people's rights, and talking about these surveys and screeners. And just a concern that I have is, you know, we've added, my understanding, if it's underlined or red, it's been added, correct? Being added to the, so, you know, we've now added, you know, questions in these surveys, and I know they can be opted out, but why are we even asking some of these questions? What does the school or what do these survey companies need sexual orientation or gender identity for? Am I reading that right? Okay, so I'll finish my point. So again, we've added those. I don't know why they're being asked, and maybe Renee, you're shaking your head, maybe you can answer. So that's just my question.
Kyle, I was just going to say, that is a list where if they ask about any of those topics, they have to give a specified kind of notice. So that's why Bob wanted to make that list a little bit more comprehensive to ensure that it was a truly comprehensive list of topics that could be considered controversial, and it would get covered by that specific notification requirement. Because I think at one of the meetings we talked about, we don't survey that information. But Brandon, I think you said, did that list come from the Nebraska Department of Education, or is that from the federal?
I think it's a federal, because if we were to get federal dollars and have those audited with this in place, it has to have those pieces in there.
So I agree. I would never want my kid surveyed on any of those topics, which is precisely why it's on the list.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments? Board President, thank you. Good. Any board committees that have met, that started now? Foundation to be next week. Okay. No, last week.
We need one more member.
Does anybody want to join the group? Thank you. Anything else?
No, it can just be appointed.
On to the action items, policies.
Okay, first one on policies. So this is going to be in three parts. There's three different motions that we have to consider. The first is to adopt the policies in series 5,000 and 6,000 minus 6037. which will become active after the passage of a resolution stating such. So up to this point, we've done 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, instead of being acted at a later date with a resolution. Well, that date's today. So the first is to adopt those two series, 5,000 and 6,000, and then we'll go on from there.
Announce approval of business, air conditioners, right?
Correct.
Brandon, does the motion specifically need to carve out that one policy related to?
I think it should, because we presented all of those at this time.
I move to approve 5,000, 6,000, with the exception of 6037.
Second.
Any discussion? Chris?
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Ty,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Okay, second part. I'm going to read this. It's a short resolution, so I'm going to read it real quick so it's on there. Whereas Board of Education has updated its policies by approving new policies for KSB school law, and whereas the board elected to review and approve the updated policies over several meetings, but not taking the effective policies of the school district until they are completed the review, and whereas the board has completed its review and is ready to implement all of the updated policies by this resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved that any updated policies the board has not already implemented or hereby implemented become the official policies of the school district, superseding any prior policies. Now, therefore, be it further resolved that the board authorizes superintendent or superintendent's designee to make all necessary changes, take any necessary action to implement the updated policies. Motion to adopt said resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on the resolution.
So I think, I have something here. Did we have a couple in the 3,000s that were not really, that were kind of out there we were working on? I think one was the bids, and I can't remember what the other one was. I didn't bring my book.
Yeah, I thought we already approved that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we approved that in the meeting.
Okay.
Instead of,
I don't have any marked on my sheet here as outstanding.
the bid we did change to a limit, you have, give out, after that, it goes to the committee to get approved.
Okay.
But the other one, I don't know. Chris?
Mike,
Yes.
Ty,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Okay, the last one we have on there is to approve the student staff handbooks. You still have them in red line version. Need to get through the policy part before I can do some finalization on table of contents and some of the formatting things. Not going to change the content, not going to change the intent of the handbook, just going to clean it up is all it is.
Need some special verbiage. Any questions on that, number 5?
We're just gonna do it both at once.
Yeah.
Both handbooks.
Yep.
So I move to approve the student staff handbooks.
Discussion? Nothing changed, we just cleaned it up.
Correct.
No,
The only thing that could possibly change is if it's a policy that we discussed today. Yep.
Chris?
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Ty,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes. Insurance?
Okay, we've worked with Inspro/MMA for a long time now. Received our insurance renewal for the 23-24 school year. Overall, felt very happy about the package they were able to put together between overall coverage and workers' comp. It is an increase in cost. The two primary drivers for that are one, building costs. The insurance company has to cover our buildings if they were to be destroyed and we had to rebuild them. Building costs are going up, that value has to go up. The second primary driver was workers' comp. We had a couple claims this year that were pretty extensive, that are playing into that factor. The last thing that I talked to Dan about, he made a recommendation of looking at expanding our cybersecurity coverage, which is a standalone outside of this that we can do at any time. Anything to add, Mike?
Yeah, we've had this question before. We have a tornado F5 come through tomorrow. Do we have enough coverage to rebuild? Because that's what it all boils down to. We don't have enough coverage. We don't have coffers to go to. So I even think the 84 million, the new limit we got, is probably low. I do. I think if you look at building costs of what we're doing right now, and you take the square footage of what we have, we probably should be closer to 100. That's just my 2 cents on this. Because the thing I always go back to is, yeah, little things doesn't really matter. But if we have the, and God forbid it ever happens, but if it does, we won't be able to rebuild what we have. So that's the scary part. As a steward of the taxpayer, we could honestly put ourselves backwards and actually build less than what we currently have if we don't stay with inflation and with building houses. That's just my 2 cents. Because the rate itself, because I talked to Dan about it today, the actual property rate did not change really at all. It's just we increased, I think, what do you say, 7 million?
Yeah.
7 million.
Close to 7.
And I still think that's light. And that's just, and maybe raise the deductible even higher to offset that cost to get it to where it should be, so we have that one night, we wake up in the morning and cover. Nothing's getting cheaper. So, if it would.
Did he have rates for like if we did increase some?
No, he did. I think he went last time we did last year, and it wasn't enough saved time, I think, to offset it. But I think if we want to raise it where it should be, I mean, I think MCL would be the perfect candidate to have tell us what it would cost to rebuild this whole. If they had to come in and rebuild all our school, even a new addition down the road, what would it be? Because that's the number we need to be at least within 89, at least 90%. Because I just think of that, we don't have, I mean, it's not like we just go get more money.
Just curious how much more, we went to like a
With
25,000.
50,000 or something on the property.
How much more coverage that buys?
You know, we could even look at maybe doing a large wind and hail, the tornado we consider wind and hail. And we need 100,000. We not need, but if we have a massive loss, and keep the property deductible lower for the, fire related or something of that nature where it's not going to be a big emission, big claim where we'd like to have a lower deductible. The chances of that are very less than to none happening, but it could. At least you have 2 options. Because he showed me the number, and it made me, I thought right away that even though it went up, EMC raised it, I still think it's light. And when you talk to EMC, I talked to Trevor one day, that's even light. There's much square footage we have between the 2 buildings. So I can tell Dan tomorrow, do some options, I'll write these down and you get back with you. So we'll look at a higher wind and hail deductible, raising the values, get NCL to give us a price for maybe which way would be to replace today. And then we can go from there. Yeah. That's why I'm saying a wind and hail deductible versus property deductible, 2 different deductibles. And that would probably, the wind and hail deductible will save us some money. Other than that, I thought Dan did a great job on it. Really good. We're raising it flat pretty much. Any other questions on that?
So we got to table that. Hurry up.
August.
August what?
But he said he could.
Yeah, we can buy coverage, not have a child in the building, so we'll be fine. Brandon, breakfast, lunch prices.
Yep, what you have in the attachment there, what's in the handbooks, that is what it has to be. So each year we complete a worksheet, right, we mean Kathy, she does most of the lunch work, goes through, completes a worksheet as far as where prices are, all the different criteria that they request, and then it spits out a number that is a minimum number that we have to be at. I would say every year we are at the minimum number, but in order to get the state and federal subsidy that comes in through the lunch program that funds the majority of it, we have to be at the price that they set. So these are the minimums, and this is where we have to be.
How does this compare to last year's prices?
I think it's on there on the second.
Yeah,
There should be a second page.
Yeah.
I attached it both in case you guys have questions.
What is our percentage district-wide reduces?
It is down. Jen, do you know that number off the top of your head?
No, Shelley, do you? I want to say first.
It's low 30.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the set rates for this council year lunches. Breakfast. Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? I thought you just said.
I did too.
I was getting crickets like any second.
Are you
Talking about it.
hungry?
Seconds is good. Seconds are always good. It's very controversial. Discussion?
How, what do we have, lunchroom wise, for staff, because I know that was kind of an issue.
Yeah, it's something with paras, with lunch staff, with custodians, it's going to be a challenge. Right now, AG feels like she is staffed sufficiently.
Did the lunch program change at all from the federal side, where you actually get better food?
Nothing that I know of changed on the federal side.
I've seen many pictures of what lunch look like. I don't know what it is sometimes.
Well, I've heard some feedback from schools that are under the same guidelines where food tastes a lot different too.
It tastes better, yes. So,
I think that's an issue we have to address.
I'm fine with the prices. I think it, and I realize everything's going up. We just want to make sure the complaint, I think, and kids are going to complain about whatever, but certain ones are going to complain. Maybe it's your daughter one day, my son, whoever, but if there's anything that can be done just to help those folks, I'm willing to lend a hand, whatever. I mean, I don't know if that does much, but I think it's important that these kids, some of them eat breakfast and lunch, they got to eat, and
man, my kids eat anything. And I know mine have come home a few times, so didn't eat lunch, didn't eat.
And I know it's not an easy job. I know it's probably a thankless job. No one's thanking them for, hey, thanks for this chicken sandwich or whatever it might be. But just hearing some of the complaints that I've gotten from community members, it bothers me hearing that. So I don't know what can be done. And hopefully, Angie, this will be what, her second year. I'm sure the second year will be a lot easier on
And
the
she-
first year.
I guess the question can school districts, if they choose to be, if somebody donates some, like a type of food for the district, can they use that food, or does it have to be food that is coming from
Now, that there is the ability, I think they call it farm to table, something like that, where food can be donated to the school. There's a certain paper trail that it has to follow, but it can be done.
Is Pizza Hut still on the menu every once in a while?
Yeah.
So is that part of the farm to table? Is that just a restaurant to different schools? So
Yep.
she just gives us a good meal for the kids.
And that doesn't violate the federal guidelines.
Not that I know of.
Well, the federal guidelines are there for whatever reason. It doesn't, if our kids aren't eating, it's not doing us any good. So if we have to think outside the box, then let's think outside the box. Because I'd rather see kids And again, I'm not blaming the staff, I'm not blaming you guys, I'm just saying is there's a lot of kids that are hungry. Because they see what they got, I've seen what they get, and I'm just like, whoa, what is this today? And then, so, if we can go outside the box, if you think there's other ways we can, if we need more help from other people outside to get involved on this, let's do it.
And some of it is frankly just choices that I think we're making about what to serve. When you get into those federal guidelines, what exactly do they dictate? Do they dictate serving size? Do they dictate calories? Do they dictate, a certain amount of sugar and whole grains and
Yes.
all of the above?
Yeah.
So all serving sizes?
It dictates serving size, it definitely dictates your macros, like she has to keep track of carbohydrates, proteins, fats per meal, what everything is going into it, and then there's the paper trail that goes through that she then has to file, that then gets audited.
And do we have a limited supply? I mean, because serving size, okay, well, the chicken can either be this big or it can be this big, right?
I think it's by ounce, typically.
And can she make, like, for example, spaghetti, like, say everybody loves spaghetti, can it be made more than time slotted, or does it have to be in a rotation? Because I've always said, you make what kids eat. If they eat spaghetti, let's make a lot of spaghetti. They eat pizza, let's make a lot of pizza. That's,
But don't forget, spaghetti has to be, the noodles have to be whole grain. It can't be just.
we're not making spaghetti now.
Yeah, but it's whole grain. Noodles are whole grain, you can select whole grain as much as they want for spaghetti.
Or even chicken nuggets. Every kid loves chicken nuggets. Get that into the room. You know what I mean?
So I guess where's this coming from? Is this from, we're on the federal, is this the federal initiative that they don't ever really look at it, or is this still been since Michelle Obama? Because that's where it came in. I think I recall. Kids ain't eating.
You can tweet at them probably.
Yeah. Well, we should maybe come out and eat with them. So whole grain noodles they don't like, but that's the noodles we have to use, give them?
Yeah, there has to be so much of a percentage of the.
Can't you give them bread as whole grain?
It has to be, well, if you want to serve garlic, there's whole grain garlic bread.
Let's do it.
That might not be a good option.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I guess, Chris, I'm just saying, you have grandkids here too. You know, and you're here. It's not a popular. And I'm not blaming the cooks. I'm not. I'm just being honest. Because too many kids are hungry.
Well, and I think when kids are hungry, they don't learn, and their behavior is not great, which means it has now become a problem for our teachers and other students and our administrators. That's my
And
concern.
we have phenomenal teachers that have little stashes in their rooms. I know,
Right?
and give kids food.
Because hungry kids,
Yes.
again, I mean, I just think of myself, my behavior is not good when I'm hungry.
So that's Snickers bar.
I know. So whatever we can do to revisit that,
Yep.
I know that our hands are tied in some ways, but to Mike's point, even if you just change the garlic bread to,
I feel, for Angie,
yeah,
it's not just show up and put the food in the oven, it's thankless planning and counting and record keeping.
And then you have the staff.
Yeah, sure.
I think you start going above and beyond, which we need to, for garlic bread or making cinnamon rolls, that's just one more step, we need one more body that's, we don't have enough body that we need to make sure that we can serve our food per individual. Yeah, that's, I think, there's a few points. Other discussion topics on lunch prices? Chris?
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Fred,
Yep.
Bob.
Yay. 5-4, sir, decline.
Okay, Jennifer Johnson's here, she's gonna help me out a little bit. Safety plan, I shared that document with you. It's interesting because when the state first started this, I asked if this was mandatory and they said no. And we had a safety plan that we reviewed and that we had in place, and then when it came down to it, while the exercise itself was not required, the format was. So we now have a safety plan that you'll also see termed an emergency operations plan that is lengthy. It is a working document. It might change throughout the year, but it's going to require your approval on a yearly basis going forward, looking somewhat like this does. Jen, anything to add?
No, I agree with everything. It was one of those things where we're like, we're good, and then they're like, nope, you have to do it this way, and it was kind of a tedious formatting process, but I think we've knocked out everything we can that's reasonable to have in advance and put it out to you guys. It's already been submitted to the state as is, but we need your approval and your feedback on what it looks like.
Does the state provide feedback at all?
I think they'll just let us know if we did it wrong. Like, I don't know. We're kind of in this limbo land of you need to do it, but not necessarily provided a ton of information as to what happens if we do it well or poorly or anything like that, so.
They'll tell you if you do it wrong, but they won't tell you how to do it
We
right.
just will, yeah, if you hear nothing, then it must be fine, kind of thing. And I don't think there's anything like that they'll come back and be like, your guys are horrible, or I think it's just so we have some things in place for, like Mike, you're talking about, if there is a tornado, what's your plan? What are you gonna do? Kind of thing, so.
So just out of curiosity, how is everyone going to be educated on this? What's the expectation in terms of, does everybody have to read it?
Well, right now, the tentative plan is, and we'll get some feedback from you, is we will do a summary overview on Monday of staff development when we all come back. We are required, and you'll see in there, like, there's certain activities we're required to do. Like, we're required to review our standard response protocol. We're required to go over how we're gonna do drills and what those look like. Those are, we have to do those, but they're all included in the emergency operations plan, and then we'll go over a summary of it, because it's what, 60, 80 pages long? And then it'll be available for anybody who wants it in detail, if they can't sleep at night and need some light reading.
Do you suppose the Department of Ed asks for all these plans across the state, and they'll kind of compile and come up with their own template and shove it back out?
Probably. And it was one of those, like, it was surprise it's required. Like, we don't know how there's districts out there, like, local districts that are nearby that are, how they're gonna accomplish this in the timeline they gave us, but that's why it was submitted as is, to the best of our ability.
Any other questions for Jeff? Brett?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
You know, just borrowing from hospital emergency preparedness, one of the things that we do is take this very long plan and do a cheat sheet for each kind of incident where you've got a paragraph of bullet points of things they need to do, and then make sure that it is accessible to everyone in an emergency, because in an emergency, you're not going to be able to read a 60-page plan. But if you just have bullet points where you could, okay, what am I supposed to do, and you have it readily accessible, just something that I think is useful, because I've never read the hospital's plan. I'm never going to read the hospital's plan, but I certainly hope I have something quick available to me in the event I find myself in an emergency. And that's kind of their compromise.
And that's what we have, sorry, I'm coming back, great. Through our standard response protocol, which you'll see by like all the exits, it says like in an emergency, like if it's evacuate, this is what that means. And that's what our tornado drill is, or a fire drill, sorry. We're gonna evacuate the building. If it's a shelter, that's a tornado, that's what that means. All we have to do is announce that, you just have to know what you need to do. We're not gonna say tornado, we're gonna say shelter, go to your shelter and location. So these are the things, these are your bullet points you're responsible for knowing, and that includes like those lovely ones, like your lockdowns and all those lovely ones, but they're all on there. So that's exactly what we train those staff on, that's that training of that standard response protocol at the beginning of the year. I think we come and do it with new staff, like an in-depth one, and then we do it with all staff, a summary, and then we do it with students at the beginning of the year. So they have those bullet points that you just have to listen to the direction and follow the directions you're given.
So we're gonna be,
And that's in every room.
That's
Every
in
classroom?
every classroom should have one hanging, it should have one in an emergency folder, and then it should be by every exit in the building,
That's awesome.
in every building. And then there should be like little icons above rooms that can be a shelter location. I'm pretty sure, there should be. They just came out with version 3 like last month, so Mr. Kreifels just sent that to me and I'm like, it's still July. I'm not ready. All right, can I answer anything else about that?
No, I think that's
Okay.
great.
Any other questions? Chris?
We don't make that motion.
All that discussion for a motion? Items for discussion. Take out, try.
Okay, Bob made the motion.
one second.
Okay, ready? Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Service.
Okay, we worked with Family Service for several years now for additional student counseling. Some of those more severe cases started out as completely grant funded through the county. Like grants do, those funds typically dwindle down, and that responsibility then comes back to the district. What Family Service has proposed this year is an additional allocation of $11,608.50, bringing it to a total of $47,728.50, would maintain 4 days a week of counseling, outside counseling for students. If we were to maintain the same amount we used last year, it would be 3 days a week instead of 4 days a week. Part of this is still grant funded. I mean, it's not that we're incurring the entire cost, but we do continue to take on more and more of that cost in addition to the grant. So I think the question before you guys is, do you want to make the additional investment in it to maintain 4 days? Or do we want to stay with where we were at last year and back down 3 days for student counseling?
Were there instances last year where 3 days was not enough for them to see the kids they needed to, or be with the kids they needed to?
4 days probably isn't enough.
4 days.
They have, so in 4 days, they have a caseload, a set caseload, and then there will be students waiting on referrals. So if somebody were to graduate from counseling, then they would bring another student.
And what happens with the kids on the wait list? They just either have to go find outside services or
Yeah,
nothing.
it's beyond the scope of what we can provide. Jen, is that fair?
Yeah, I was like, it's for those kids that, I'm gonna get, like, I should be doing spots. It's for those kids that need ongoing mental health support that goes above and beyond what our school counselors or what I'm able to provide. And we do have a long waiting list. It's not like we cooperate with Blue Valley to do a YAP program. That's a short-term 6-week program for those kind of kids that need just some quick counseling services that are beyond what our counselors are able to provide. This is more serious mental health services. And there's typically a waiting list that's a good 5 to 10 kids long at both buildings. So in the past, we've had somebody at the elementary that had a caseload of elementary kids, and then this year we've had 2 counselors through Family Service up here at the middle school and high school level. They kind of took that caseload and divided, and there's typically a waiting list to get on those, and they're seeing kids twice a month or once a week, usually. Like for those kids, decision is for those kids that for whatever reasons they can't get to counseling services outside of Wahoo, either due to transportation or financial issues. And we as a team have decided their mental health status deems it important enough for them to have those services here at school. So the kids that can afford to go, we try to let those kids and save it for these kids that without us providing this here on site, they would get no mental health support, and it's beyond what myself or the counseling team is able to appropriately address. Did that answer the question?
Are there any other companies that might do the same services for?
Family Service provides support through Lincoln Public Schools. I know in Omaha and Elkhorn, they use a different kind, they have a similar agreement, but with a different counseling service. So there might be, but I don't know which ones are willing to travel out to Wahoo.
Are you very comfortable with this company?
I am.
And are there no practitioners here in Saunders County that could provide these services?
As of right now, I know Blue Valley Behavior Health had like 2 or 3, and they had a wait list of 3 to 4 months to get in. And then Cody Camp just started a service, and I don't know what her openings, waiting list, I don't have any idea what that looks like. And then Saunders Medical has, I think they used to contract with Family Service as well, and I don't know if they still are, they've hired their own, have contracted that service, and there's a wait list a few months out for that individual as well. So, not really, there's a few, but they're booked. Like right now, we've had kids with some significant mental health needs, bordering on like inpatient needs that have a 3 or 4 month wait to get into like an Omaha Lincoln service. So,
Do you see an increase of need every year for this service?
yes,
So what's the solution, do you think?
it's complex. I don't have a good answer. It's just hard to be a kid right now. There's just lots of pressure from lots of different places, and is it because of what? I don't know. I just know we have lots of kids with lots of complex needs that if we can help them, I'd love to be able to give them that support to help their mental health outcomes, help them to be the best they can be when they leave Wahoo Public.
Brandon, have we explored any other potential grant dollars for mental health services? Is there anything else available?
I have not at this point because the other one that we utilize is through ESU2. They have access some grant dollars for LMHPs, and I think 2 days a week that we're
We're up
utilizing.
at the elementary, we'll do 2 days a week with that individually, yeah.
So we have not gone beyond what Family Service and ESU have done, because typically with those grant dollars, those are big ticket where you have professional grant writers and applications.
So Jen, if I hear you right, it's getting not better, it's getting worse. We got more kiddos, you're telling me. So have we looked at a 5th day, 5 days, or you can even go 5 days?
We haven't looked at a 5th day yet because I feel like we're adding that middle school counselor this year, where we now have a dedicated counselor in each building, plus myself to hit kind of those other ones. I think we kind of want to wait and see if we can start, rather than reacting to the problems on the back end, start seeing if we can get some things on the front end and giving some kids some coping skills and those kind of strategies. But there may be at the end of this year where we're like, we need to
Well, my
move it to
question though
5.
is, based on grant dollars, we don't know yet for what we're gonna give, do we even have a clue what a 5th day would cost us? Because I'd rather be proactive than reactive. Even though you say we have a new counselor,
Right.
would it be better off to be ahead of the game? And be able, I'm just speaking,
It hasn't even, I didn't think it was even a possibility, so I never even went there. So
well,
I don't know if we added a 5th day, what, we'd have to talk to Family Service to see
Because-
what that would cost.
is it kind of like going to, the more you buy, cheaper it gets?
I don't
Because
know that.
I figure if we did I just did the math on the 4 days, we get a deal if we get 4 days instead of,
Buy 4, you get 1 free.
or just say, what would it cost for a 5th day? Because I'm with you. It's not going to get better.
The other tricky part is it depends on what Family Service has available to get out here too. So it's kind of twofold. We can see if it's even a possibility, and if it is, what it costs, I guess.
I don't think we can go backwards for the free. That's making sense for anybody.
Fraternities or whatever.
Yeah.
I worry about the 5 to 10 on the wait list, to your point, Mike, because what that means is they have to be in the classrooms and our teachers have to deal with whatever those unresolved mental health issues are.
And we don't just leave them like hanging. They have support through our school counselors or whatever. It's just their needs are so, like, they're beyond their scope of practice, so they can't really give them what they need. They can kind of triage it until they can get to that professional.
So, Brandon, if I heard you correctly, this dollar amount, we pick up a chunk of it, but there's some grant funding that we will get, we just don't know the exact amount, right?
They get the grant dollars and they're paying for it on their end. So what we're seeing is what we
This dollar amount is what we will pay.
is what we will pay, and there's no grant going towards that. What it actually costs them to provide that service, that's the grant dollar that's coming in on their end.
So today, to go to the same 4 days, $47,740.50 is our cost.
Correct.
District. Okay, that's never, so there's no grant money knocking down. For us, it's on the other end. Okay.
Is it the same family service rep that comes out?
Not always. Since we started it, we've had 4 different ones, and then we added a 5th last year. So we've only had 1 repeat come back the next year, like once or twice.
So they would, is it fair to say if they start the school year, they're most likely here through it?
If they start the school year, we've never had anybody leave mid-year. It's been kind of a summer change depending on their service providers, if they stay with their company or not, kind of thing, or if they get reassigned someplace else.
Trying to think of a creative way to contract with them to basically employ a Walker Public Schools rep,
Right.
which would be the 5th day, but
And just for reference, last year with the grant, so last year we paid $36,120, the grant support was $32,680. So it was almost a 50-50 split. We don't know what that grant allocation, they can estimate it, but the reason for the increased cost is more cost on their end than necessarily the grant absolutely going down. And it may be a combination of both. That grant hasn't been awarded yet.
But that grant doesn't affect us. Our number's done.
Our cost is our cost.
Yeah, so I guess it's a viewpoint from our end. We just gotta decide if we want to be really proactive or be.
And to be honest, they may not provide somebody 5 days a week, because I know they have 1 day where they meet in clinic for case review.
But if there's a single gentleman that we say is now open to practice here, why would we?
But we could, yes, I meant through family
Oh,
service.
I'm just saying in general.
Yes.
So Jen, I got a question for you. You said you want to get away from being reactive and be more proactive with coping skills and things like that. Is there a way to be even more proactive to help alleviate the adverse, what do they call the ACEs?
The adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah, because that's really what is causing all of this. Adverse childhood experiences
Yep.
causes the mental stress that basically you guys just try to patch them up during the day, and then potentially they go back and just get a new adverse childhood experience that in the evening or the next morning. And then you patch them up again, and it's this vicious cycle over and over again. So what is out there to, stop that cycle so that you aren't just doing, Band-Aids on a cancer, you're actually curing the cancer?
And it's complex. Cindy and I, and John to some degree, mostly Cindy and I, because I'm district-wide, but she's at the elementary, middle school level, have worked on trying to figure out curriculum, if what we're using for her curriculum in the classroom is the best for what we need to be done, or is there something that would better suit our kids? We've talked about now that she's going to be in there 5 days a week at the elementary instead of 4.5, is there any way we can spice that up and make things a little meatier? We've talked about me going into the classroom. We've talked about how can we help teachers on the teacher side to know to take care of themselves, to be able to address student needs. Do we put it in the classroom as kind of like a social studies curriculum time? Do we have it more driven than, like Cindy was only able to get in there once every 3 weeks this year. So that's really not, that's a tiny little Band-Aid on a big wound. How can we adjust that? So there's lots of flexible pieces. Mr. Kreifels, we have a social emotional team where we're trying to problem solve, and professional development last year was focused on trauma and working with the teachers and recognizing and responding to trauma. We have some PD things in place with ESU2 this year to do some more kind of impact work to give teachers some tools. So it isn't always just, I don't know what to do. Like I can start when it's kind of just bleeding a little bit and I can help. So there's lots of those pieces, but it's a lot of work because it's hard to get on the proactive side when there's a lot of reactive things you need to tend to as well.
And the biggest problem is you can't work with the parents to get them to stop having adverse effects on their own children.
Yep.
Or, you know, whoever they are that's doing this.
And,
Mostly it's the
yeah,
parents.
we're responsible for the kids and we have them and love them for when we have them, and then sometimes we can't control what we can't control. So we try to give them a positive experience, but
So my thought is that, you know, 8 days a week of school counseling is not going to reduce the amount of increase in this over time. If anything, it's you know, your fingers in the dike, but there's holes all over. You don't have enough fingers to plug them. So
right, and you know, parents get to make their own decisions for their families for what's appropriate. We at school can do what we can to at least give kids some tools and hopefully give them some resiliency factors so then when they leave, they have some things to maybe overcome some of those ACE experiences, or at least know who they can talk to or those kinds of things.
So what I would love to see district-wide is some opportunity to use the school to have therapists come in and talk to parents about parenting skills, about, you know, just basic parenting procedures they can use with kids that are already showing some stressors in their life, and new parents, things like that. We've got a great facility here, and we probably have a lot of mental health professionals that would come in and either volunteer their time or do it on a free will basis, free will donation basis. I'd love to see that.
And I know we use it with, I'm looking at, because Ben's not here, with Head Start. We've done some parenting things with our Head Start kids. We've had some, Dr. Riley, Tim Riley out of Lincoln had come one time. It's one of those getting the mass. It's hard when the people you need to come don't come. The people who have the great skills are the ones who show up. So we've done sending information home in packets. We've done, so we can look at doing maybe some more of those kind of parenting tidbits. When I know Ben sends out his newsletter online, we try to get a little blurb in there somehow about different ideas for, you know, building strong family bonds or
Offer a meal.
I know, I feel like we're Midwesterners. If we have a potluck, everybody will come.
Family service, if they're seeing trends in their cases, do they offer a speaker or one of their professionals to come out and do like a lunch and learn or dinner
We can
and learn
ask.
with the families that they've.
Because you're right,
that are in
you
our-
get it from 8 to 3. From 3 till the next morning, they're not yours.
But in fairness, a lot of this too is driven by poverty. So people are working second jobs when we would love to have them here at the school. Or that's not everybody, but it's
I
a part
agree,
of it.
but we don't know that.
Well,
We gotta take the first steps to see what's out there and try it. And then if the reaction is, they say we gotta work, so we adapt and change. Again, I think that's where there's more than one way to do something. So let's figure out how that way needs to be done, and let's do it.
And it might be a couple different ways, like
Yeah.
it works this way for this group of parents and that way for that group of parents, and so we'll kind of look at seeing who we can get in for speakers and because I know like Karen Hasse will do a parent one on digital citizenship. She'll talk to kids during the day and parents at night. I'll have to do some looking and see what else is out there in terms of that we can tie together.
We can help you when we can.
Okay.
And there are people I know personally would donate money for this, for meals and stuff like
Okay.
this to get it set up.
All right.
So,
Can I sit down?
are we gonna have them look into a 5th day? Or do we wanna first approve a minimum of 4 days,
What
or
I-
vote to approve it?
Yeah, what I would recommend is approve the 4 days, and then we can investigate the 5 days, because she's having to finalize her workloads and her people now. So if we can lock in the 4 days and make sure we're getting at least that, then I can talk with Helen and anybody else about, okay, what does a 5th day look like? What does that cost? How does that work for you guys? That sort of thing.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, to Mike's point, I think we're getting a deal by adding the 4th day. It appears that,
Yeah, to me, it looks like a sweet deal for us.
it's disheartening here that we have a wait list.
It's sad.
Nothing ever.
I mean, it's burnout, high burnout, profession. Make a motion. Oh,
Second.
Any further discussion? Chris?
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yep.
Bob,
Yes. Brad, and classified staff compensation package.
Okay, as I shared in my email leading up to the meeting, we're still working on hiring a couple positions in classified staff, especially paraprofessionals. What I would ask, what we've done in the past is just said total package increase at X%. Tell me what that maximum percentage is, and I will make sure that we're under that. I can't give you anything definitive until we hire or we don't hire everybody we need.
How close are we? 2, 10? I guess it's kind of a
Less,
fluid
less,
number.
less than 10, but it's a fluid number because, let's say, on the paraprofessionals, we hire somebody for 2 days a week. Well, now we need 3 days a week, plus we need somebody else. All of that adds up.
So my question would be,
Yep.
for this position, if we're hiring new, we have to pay more for new. Just say I believe that what we're paying the new, I don't want to have anybody that's classified getting less than what we're hiring for new.
Correct.
So if we're hiring a guy at 16, everybody, in my opinion, should be at 16 or more. I know it's hard to do, but I think it's hard enough to find them.
Right.
And I think if we're gonna do this, if we're gonna go out and tell somebody you're gonna get this amount, we got somebody making this, that's not, in my opinion, I would not be in favor of that at all. I would say I better be at least making what they make.
My caveat to that would be based on experience. So if we're hiring somebody with experience in education or as a paraprofessional, they might come in at something higher than somebody in their second year as a paraprofessional or in education, just like it would be on a teacher salary schedule. And if that's not what you want, you guys can tell me, but that's what I've been doing.
So just to clarify, if we have somebody who has 2 years of experience,
Yep.
who's currently employed, and you hire someone with 3 years of experience, they may come in above the person with 2 who's a current employee. But you make sure to true that up so everyone with 2 gets the same rate, everyone with 3 years of experience gets the same, et cetera.
That's what I've been working to do over a period of time. Before I got here, it was a little bit of a random board, and I've tried to, in your words, true that up on the semi-schedule. It's been a work in progress, just trying to get everybody to where they need to be. We're much closer now than we were before.
How long until we are there?
Next year, probably.
And in terms of our needs, so we're talking about paraprofessionals, bus drivers, who else? What's our group here?
Paraprofessionals, bus drivers, office staff, kitchen staff, custodial staff.
And do you know how many full-time equivalents we need in each area? Meaning, if you've got someone who will do 2 days and someone who does 3, that's 1 full-time equivalent. Do we know how many full-time equivalent openings we have in each?
Shelley, can I put you on the spot quick? What do you got on paraprofessionals? is that counting the one you just hired?
Today.
You sent me an email?
No.
She's not included on that list? Okay.
Yeah, she is.
She is.
But the one that I interviewed today is not.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Now shortly beyond bus drivers, we still gonna have to have teachers driving?
Potentially. If we do, we've worked the schedule so we're not missing class time to do that. When it comes to routes, if he's available, he's still probably gonna drive.
That's his choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
He wants to drive.
He likes
He
that.
likes it.
Yeah. He drives every morning and then he fills in the afternoon before desert.
How short are we in the office?
We're staffed in the office for now.
Kitchen?
Kitchen, she says she's good.
Yeah. Well, whatever we're getting them now is not enough for what they have to do every day in the classroom. I don't know what percentage of this even makes sense, but I'm telling you, what they do every day, we're not paying them enough, and I don't know, but again, it's about money. You have a pool of money that you can use, I don't know what that number, you have to tell us.
The number that I threw out to you guys was the same as teachers at 3.7% for the total package increase. And we'll find a way to make it work.
Can't keep shuffling.
Can't.
People in front of these kids.
Yeah, I don't want to be going to another school district because we're getting a dollar for something more. I mean,
There's a lot of money to be had out there right now in this labor market.
I'm just thinking more, just thinking of the kids to have
Yeah,
something
I agree.
that's a compensate.
Structure, we have the same person in the room.
Two paras every day, we give them some sort of, even if it's just a little bit of confidence that they may have to make.
Shelley, is money driving this?
Be honest.
Partially,
Yes.
partially, it's just hard finding people.
Yeah. It's hard work.
It's, yeah, it's a hard job to have, yeah.
So when you interview, like you interviewed this lady, what was one of the first questions? Did she ask what's the hourly wage?
I start our interviews now with telling what the salary is, what days they'll work, the benefits that they have. And then I ask if they're interested in continuing the interview. Because I've had people that in the past have said, I can't work for that.
I have questions on the range, percentage.
What's your thoughts? 3.5, 4, looking for? Let's see, more.
What's the delta?
Yeah.
What have you asked for versus what are we proposing?
1.37.
Uh-huh. And what does that equate to in dollars?
You have to give me a minute here.
Are we doing hiring bonuses still?
We don't do hiring bonuses.
Like, what do you
We
do?
retention
So
ones.
each day a year you get,
Twice a year, you
oh, so you
get
get,
an amount based on your FTE.
okay.
And that's for paraprofessional staff only,
No,
correct?
no, that's for support staff.
So every year you stay, you get a bonus? So everybody
If,
does?
so let's say we had 5 new paras that started last September, and they're all coming back this year. In December, they'll get a $500 bonus.
Oh, so you don't get it
In
till
May,
a year
they'll
later,
get
you
a
get paid for a year.
And that
Have
happens.
to
But that's a one-time deal? Every year?
They get one in December and one in May. We break it up so
Yeah,
they
but
continue.
but then it's done though. The next year they don't get it.
Yeah, they do it.
Yeah.
So every para gets that every year?
Yeah.
If we continue.
It just started that last year.
Yeah,
Correct.
last year was our first year.
And
And
my plan is
I
to
believe that helped a
A
lot.
lot. It
What-
helped us keep staff.
You're not taking that off the table.
Yeah.
Going to,
I would, yeah, I think we as the board got help you guys from people, which,
make this.
if that's helping keep them around.
Just that delta difference based on the raw number from last year on total package, from 3.7 to 4.0 is about $12,000.
You can find it.
I'll make it work.
Okay. Make a motion to approve an increase of 4% for classified items. Yeah.
The second time.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Chris?
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
So project planning.
Let's go down to 5B if we can. We'll just roll it into one.
Perfect. 5A, yeah, for MCL.
Okay, so met with MCL today. I guess I sent you guys out that 5-week look ahead. Everything is on schedule as of right now. No big concerns that they have. You'll start seeing around the 1st of August, some of those prefab walls are going to start standing and things are going to look significantly different. They were a ways ahead of schedule because June was so dry. With all the rain that we've had in July, it's backed them down to being on schedule, which is a good thing, as long as we're not falling behind. With the pay app, there was a question on some payroll information that I think is still being worked back and forth.
Yes, and I will tell you, I told them what we needed June 21st. That was a 30-minute exercise. And they're still, well, what exactly do you need? This is not hard. Anybody who does payroll knows what a payroll report is. MCL needs to step up and deliver. And to be honest, if they don't, including all of the prior payroll reports for prior pay apps, then we need to start excluding that until they start delivering. Because again, this is not hard.
It's just payroll report on their, the contracts they work themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
It's
It's not
just-
across the board.
No, it's just the people that they are billing for us,
Right.
what they're doing is they're generating an invoice with a set number, but they can't justify the underlying number, which is what a payroll report will show. And so, again, I know that that is unusual, but having been on the contractor side, I know that it's important to see those payroll reports. So, I think they, and I offered, I'm happy to get on the phone with their payroll person. And so,
I'll make a call tomorrow. We'll see who I can get in touch with. As far as the pay application, it was reviewed by BVH, it was reviewed by Russ. Everything looked on the up and up other than payroll information.
Any specific questions on that?
Renee, so you're good with making this payment?
this is the last one.
Okay.
Because we said this after the last meeting. And that meeting, I had been slow. This one, June 21st, I got back to him with what we needed. And it was last week, he says, well, now tell me again exactly, what is it that you're looking for? Come on.
So Brendan just relayed the message that
Yep.
they won't get paid the next one if we don't have it.
Yep.
And we're gonna need to true up all the prior payouts. So we don't just want this payroll. I wanna see from the beginning. And again, I don't doubt it, but the whole purpose of a cost plus contract is just justify your costs. And we're not asking for anything that they have to go and recreate the wheel. They need to push a button. So I will again make myself available to talk to whomever, whenever, about what should be in that report.
I'm good with all of it. I did have a question on the document you sent out, 5-week look ahead. There was on our contingency, the school's contingency, there was 3 different transaction line items on there. 2 paid out and then looked like a deposit back.
Right. So the 2 payouts would be the storage shed
Yeah,
out of the bus
I
barn.
saw that, I just didn't
and the
understand what
apron.
the money back was.
The credit was they had all kinds of receptacles in the bus yard for electrical, and they took some of those out per Coleman's review and recommendation. Didn't need as many as were there, so that's that credit.
Brandon, are you hearing about any other unforeseen conditions, things that they've run into that they were not expecting that we should be aware of, change orders?
No, nothing for change orders. It's taken a little bit longer on the last set of footings nearest the building on the southwest corner, just because it always confused me. They call it 50% surcharge. Basically, the settling of the dirt, they had to true that up. So they dug a hole, filled the hole back in. Now they're going to dig the hole back out once they got the okay, and they'll start doing footings there probably next week. That's been the only holdup that we've seen so far, but that's not going to be a financial issue.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the application number 3 for MCL in a total of $699.88?
Second.
Chris?
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes. Nothing personnel resignation for hiring, administrative salaries.
Shared some information after last month's meeting, and also visited with Brett a little bit. What the recommendation that came from me was a total package increase of 3% for the administrative team. Again, this is, I left it blank because it's up to you, just like classified salary.
Everybody did get an email on the
I did.
array,
Yeah.
where they kind of sit in line with most schools like size in our area.
How much of what you decide to give to each administrator is based on their performance?
I don't know that I have a specific percentage that would identify. Performance is taken into account, array is taken into account, and general conversation with the individual is taken into account when deciding on a set point.
Do you do performance reviews with them on an annual basis?
Yep.
Do you set goals with them on an annual basis?
We talk about goals, we don't necessarily specifically define those. I do ask them at the beginning of each year, as a professional development piece, to have a quantitative and a qualitative, a quantitative and a non-quantitative goal. The quantitative has to be professional, the non-quantitative, just based on anecdotal input, may be professional, may be personal, may be some combination thereof.
So what exactly are you evaluating on their performance evaluations?
I can share that with you. It's a document that the board approved before I was here, I think, that it includes, well, here, let me just pull it up. There's criteria areas. Give me just a second. Vision for learning, continuous school improvement, instructional leadership, culture for learning, systems management, staff leadership, developing relationships, professional ethics and advocacy, understanding and executing his or her role. Those are the 9 kind of broad areas under the umbrella of the review.
And then are you ranking those numerically?
No, it's a met, not met.
Could you send out that template?
Did they see a copy of your evaluation?
Do what?
You have a copy of your evaluation?
Yeah, so they get a copy, we meet and we discuss it, and a signed copy goes into their file, and then they can have a signed copy if they want. Correct. Yeah, what I asked them to do is sometime in the fourth quarter, they complete a self-evaluation, which is the evaluation tool, it's them putting input into it. I take that and then I include that along with my comments in their final evaluation that we sit down and discuss.
Do you solicit feedback from the people they oversee?
Often, not always.
How do you decide?
Part of it is timing. Most years, there's a survey that we go through. That's sent out to staff to complete. I did not do that this year, mostly because I just missed the timeline on
Is that an anonymous thing?
it. Yes.
What's the cost of living right now? Cost of living. Yeah, I think it's quite high. You're comfortable with it? Have you had discussions with your administrators about it? They're good or please? Just positive or negative feedback?
Overall, acceptable.
Okay.
I'd make a motion for a 3% increase.
I second it.
Further discussion? Chris?
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
5.11.
Probably should.
Session for Brendan's.
Yeah.
For an executive session.
Second.
Discussion? Chris?
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
If you want to turn off the microphones, I'll turn off.